This is Inside the Right. So, Tim, Donald Trump came out and announced that he raised $50 million in his latest campaign event, and there's been a lot of skepticism surrounding this number. Do you buy into this idea that he just so happened to raise exactly 2 times what Joe Biden raised only a couple of weeks earlier?
No, he's a liar, and it is annoying that the media folks do this still. We're still doing this 9 years in. I understood that back in 2016, Trump took advantage of the fact that this was kind of how things went, right? Campaign tells reporter, "Hey, we raised X amount at this fundraiser." Reporter writes a story about it. It's a small story; it's not a big deal, but. And then every once in a while, some of the campaigns would be liars. You'd find out when they reported, and then there'd be a bad story about it. We're going to take Donald Trump at his word. He's just been lying about everything. Their campaign lies and exaggerates. This one is such an obvious lie, as you point out, that it's exactly double the amount. So, look, they clearly raised some money. They clearly raised, had a decent fundraising day, but they had a huge amount to pick up. And I'm certain that when the actual fundraising reports come out next month, we'll see that they're lying once again.
Will we be able to fact check that number eventually, to your point? Like, is there something that's going to come out specifically that says how much exactly he was able to raise?
Not really. I mean, there'll be a report, and then you can go through and see how much they brought in on a given day. But a lot of this is a little bit fungible, right? Because they could say, well, they just pledged it
Right.
that day, and the number really came in a couple days later. So, yeah, I mean, there will be a FEC report you can go and look through. And I think you'll see, I think, again, it'll just be plain that Donald Trump did not raise double Joe Biden. I imagine that Joe Biden's going to raise more in the next reporting period, just like he has in the last few, because Donald Trump is struggling. And he's got a two-pronged problem, which is that he's bled his small dollar donors dry for years now with all of his legal fees. And frankly, he never was that strong with the big donors on the Republican side.
Does it worry you to see the media, 8 years into the Donald Trump of it all, still kind of acting as a megaphone, just kind of transcribing what he tells them to say?
Yes, yes. I mean, I have so many complaints. I just don't understand why they haven't adjusted. There have been a
Right.
few adjustments, right? You don't see the empty podium now on CNN. So there have been a few adjustments, but
Low,
this is
low
one
bar, low bar
example.
to clear there.
Yeah, low bar to clear. Just like taking Trump at his word and repeating what the campaign says, even though they have a long record of lying. That's one thing that's frustrating. Another thing is they still use there'll be an anonymous source inside the Trump campaign that'll tell them something, and then they'll report on it, and then that source will lie.
Yeah.
And Trump will lie and say, "Oh, it's fake news," even though we all know it's real news. But there are just so many examples of reporters falling into his traps, and he's been laying the same traps for almost a decade now, and it's time for folks to stop.
Well, you've been especially outspoken about this on The Bulwark, which is your YouTube channel, your media outlet that you work on with the rest of these pro-democracy Republicans. So for folks watching right now, if you want to support the invaluable work that Tim and his team do, make sure to subscribe to The Bulwark. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. That'll help us build up this pro-democracy ecosystem from left to right that we're building right now. Tim, so Joe Biden's already on the air in a number of swing states. How important do you think it is defining the opposition early and controlling the narrative in an election where we already are so polarized, where it doesn't feel like there's a lot of people in the middle?
Yeah, I think that there's diminishing returns on presidential campaigns when it comes to these ads, as compared to, we were talking about the Carrie Lake thing, another Inside the Right episode, where I think that she can be defined, the Senate race can be defined a little easier, and then even lower down, it gets easier. But I'll say this. Joe Biden being able to I think define his record and define his case without really much pushback from Donald Trump on the air is important for him as far as shoring up people that are probably going to be on his side anyway, kind of reminding people of the threat of Trump, reminding people of the good things he did. Folks that don't watch YouTube videos like this, folks that
Yeah.
don't follow the news day to day, but who are temperamentally Democratic or temperamentally anti-Trump.
Yeah.
He can reach those folks with the paid media, and I think that you're seeing that in the polls just a little bit. You're seeing some marginal improvement for Biden in the polling averages over the past few weeks, and I think that the money element has a big part has something to do with that.
Yeah, I think too. I mean, Donald Trump has definitely benefited from the fact that he isn't really on the air in most places. I mean, you won't hear from Donald Trump if you're if you're a layperson, you're not like a political freak seeking out this stuff. Which, first of all, good on you.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
if you're not seeking out this stuff, unless you're watching whatever random phone interview he's doing with Right Side Broadcasting Network or Newsmax, or going to one of his rallies, you don't actually see any of this stuff. And that's redounded to his benefit because most people forget the insanity of what it was like. I mean, Aaron Rupar does a great job on Twitter of doing like 4 years ago today, this is what was happening. And it gives you a reminder of just the utter insanity of what it was like to have a president like Trump during a time like COVID, where he was just out there fucking cosplaying as a doctor. And the guy is not only not a doctor, he's way dumber than the normal person. So like definitely not someone you should listen to for like even to know whether you should take Tylenol or something. And this guy is just telling, hundreds of millions of people what new medical procedures that just popped into his brain because some errant synapse fired that you should take as the result of like some global pandemic.
Yeah, and Trump is not going to make it easy on himself in order to stay out of people's minds much longer. I do think that this kind of combination of Biden being able to have the money and the resources to do paid TV against Trump now being more and more in the news, more and more in people's faces, crazy stuff that he's saying. He's going to be, having to come up with a defense of his position on abortion over and over again, right? And we know that he's going to continue to say insane things now that he has this trial coming up next week, right? Having him in people's faces more, combined with the Biden paid, I think is going to continue to help on the margin. It's still going to be very, very close. But I do think both that has benefited Trump to date, that he's been out of the people's faces, relatively speaking, and people are going to get a strong dose of Trump good and hard here over the next few months.
The irony of that is that for as much as Trump gets hurt by the fact that more and more people can hear from him, Biden actually does better. I mean, he gets bumps every time he does get on a national stage. When he's had these last two State of the Unions, it came at a time when he was being defined so heavily by the right as being in the throes of cognitive decline. And then, given that basement bar that Republicans have set for him, when he shows up at the State of the Union and not only is able to say his name and tie his shoes, but also like deliver this grand sweeping speech and swat down some Republican heckling while he's at it, like he always sees a bump in the polling because Republicans do set the bar so low. So it's kind of ironic that as these candidates continue to get in front of the American people more and more, it's going to just have the impact of hurting Donald Trump and helping Joe Biden.
I was talking with former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger on the Bulwark YouTube feed the other day, and he pointed this out, right? And he spends a lot of he lives in Texas now, and he spends a lot of time in these more conservative environs. And he's like, people's memories of Trump, they kind of don't remember how much they hated him. The anti-Trump Republican types, like he hasn't been in their face as much, and so it's not quite as real for them as it was during the pandemic, for example. And then on the flip side, all they hear on Fox is that Joe Biden is dementia riddled. Yeah. And so they see Joe Biden and they're like, oh, okay, well, he's not as bad. So I think that Kinzinger's right about this, and that kind of the expectations game in a weird way is working out in Biden's favor with some of these swing voters.
Yeah, I completely agree. You'd mentioned the Bulwark feed. Again, for those watching right now, if you want to support the work that Tim and his team do at the Bulwark, make sure to subscribe to their YouTube channel. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Teller Cohen.
I'm Tim Miller.
This is Inside the Right.